Hello, you lovely lot. I'm Josh Carr, and this is the Who Knew channel, and welcome back to the Speakeasy. Yes, I'm here once again in the Speakeasy, drinking some definitely non-alcoholic drinks, and discussing a random topic submitted by one of you. And today's topic is one that a few people suggested, and it's quite a broad topic, and I'm excited to talk about it. It's underrated Doctor Who episodes, specifically for New Who, so 2005 onwards. This is going to be the first of a couple, maybe 3 or 4 videos that I do talking about underrated and overrated Doctor Who stories. This is sort of part one because I am going to be releasing an episode on overrated stories from New Who, which is a little bit more difficult for me. But underrated ones, I have a hell of a lot to talk about. Bit of admin first of all. This is just my opinion. Don't scream at me if you disagree. It's absolutely fine. We can all be chill. Also, this list isn't in any particular order. There's also a lot that I didn't get to talk about, to the point where I might actually do another video on underrated New Who episodes, because I've got around about 10, but I reckon I've got another 10 that I could do. I think there's a solid round, like 20-25 episodes that I deem to be criminally underrated. So there's some in here that that I do believe are underrated, like Last Christmas, Tooth and Claw, Witchfinders, Deep Breath. Like, they are underrated, but I may talk about them in a future video. And I've tried to do like a nice even spread across the Doctors. It sort of happened naturally anyway. There are a few from each Doctor. There's no 10 in here. There's no 10th Doctor, because I don't really think there's many underrated 10th Doctor stories. I think they're all pretty much rated where they should be. But let's get started. So we're kicking it off with the 9th Doctor, and one episode that I think is very underrated, but we'll see later, maybe it isn't, is Boomtown. I love when Doctor Who episodes sort of revolve around just the TARDIS team just having a day off and it all goes a little bit tits up. That's sort of a lovely little hook for me, and this is a great example of it. And then you've got 2 great performances from Christopher Eccleston, as always, who never misses as the Doctor. But then you've got Annette Badland, who literally 5 or 6 episodes ago was playing a campy but quite dark villain, and very, very good in Aliens of London and World War III, but takes it up a notch here. And the dynamic between the Doctor and Margaret Sladine is so interesting, and I could watch it for hours. The dinner scenes are just perfect. I think it's just a brilliant concept, and if anything, I think it should have lent into that more. I think that's maybe why it gets forgotten about, because the whole destruction of Cardiff is a little bit generic, and there's a little bit too much time spent on the whole Rose side plot, which doesn't particularly interest me. I think if they'd have lent more heavily into this concept of the Doctor goes to dinner as sort of the main crux of the episode, and have it a little bit more low stakes near the end, rather than sort of forcing in a end of the world narrative again, I think it'd be more fondly remembered. But even without that, it's really funny. It's got some really dark moments, and it explores some really lovely themes, and it's just a really nice episode to just slot in that gap just before the finale. And I hope that it's, I think it's getting a bit of more of a reappraisal, which leaves it up for debate whether it's even underrated at all. But I love it. I love Boomtown. Next one I want to talk about is a Matt Smith episode. Again, right at the beginning of his era. It's The Beast Below. This episode isn't just criminally underrated by fans, it's criminally underrated by Stephen Moffat, who wrote the fucking thing. It baffles me because it's one of his strongest scripts, in my opinion. Obviously, it doesn't hit the heights of some of his greats, and it's also got some problems when it comes to, I think, the Smilers and the whole government side of it could have been explored a little bit deeper. It just seems a little bit underdeveloped and a bit flimsy, but Matt Smith's performance is one of my favourites that he gives. I love that early Series 5, sort of darker, grumpier but still quite magical 11th Doctor, like a sort of like a grumpy old wizard. I've always loved that side of his performance, and I think it's a shame that we sort of lose that a little bit in the later series. And this is the perfect place for it. And those, the climax of it, with the Star Whale and the debate on what he's going to do. Matt just absolutely nails that, and the fact that this is so early on in his run, and he hits the ground running with stuff like that so early. It also establishes Amy as a companion. I think it really seals her. That climax again is just a great moment for her too. I love the weird setting of Britain's on a spaceship on the back of a whale. I love Liz 10 as well, a really interesting supporting character, and I'm glad that we get to see her again a couple of times. It just handles so many complex themes like really delicately and really, really well played. And I think Moffat needs to cut himself some slack, because it's a little banger. It's a little underrated gem. Now, let's head all the way forward to something a little bit more recent. The 13th Doctor's era has quite a few underrated gems in there, and one of them is I can't believe people sleep on Resolution, because Resolution, or as many people think it should be called, Resolution of the Daleks, I do think Resolution of the Daleks would have been a great title. I think it's one of the best festive specials we've had, and I think it's one of the best Dalek stories of the revived era. Some people might disagree, but I just think it's so fresh and exciting, and it does something genuinely scary with the Daleks as well. And I felt like for so long they hadn't been properly scary. It almost refreshes a lot of the things that Dalek tried to do in 2005. It's sort of re-establishing them as this massive threat and something to be really feared, and it does it so well. The tank scene is one of the best scenes in Revived 2 as well. I will defend Resolution to the end purely based on that scene. But on top of that, you've got really nice character work with Ryan for once, who actually has some really lovely development there, and the cast are all great. The episode as well is doing a lot of heavy lifting, because Battle of Ranskor Kolos didn't really feel like a finale, and this now sort of has to become the finale of Series 11. I think it does it well. I just think it's got great action, great humour, great tension, and it's just a great fun watch. A fun and scary watch. Great little New Year's Day hangover cure. Now we're going to the 12th Doctor, and we're going to one of my personal favourite Doctor Who stories of all time, and a massive comfort story for me. I always stick this one on, around Christmas. Sometimes on my birthday as well. My birthday's in February, but tonally it doesn't really work because it is a festive special. And on last year's festive special of Who Knew, I had Jack Reeves, Harry Draper, and Mr. TARDIS. A fine committee, I'm sure you'll agree, alongside me. Very inebriated, and we were talking about our favourite Doctor Who festive specials, and this one is the one that came out on top. It was the best voted out by the four of us, and it's The Husbands of River Song. I love The Husbands of River Song so much, and I don't know why people don't hold it in that upper echelons, and I think it's because it is something very different for Who. But ironically, I think Doctor Who does a screwball comedy at Christmas is the most Doctor Who thing I've ever heard. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's comedy gold. It's one of the funniest episodes of Doctor Who going. And then you've got Capaldi and Kingston, just the instant chemistry. It is a bit of a shame that we don't get to see more of them on screen together, because they would be absolutely brilliant, and maybe one day we'll get a big finished box set of all of those years on Beryllium, and we get to see those two go up against each other again, because it's a great little dynamic. Absolutely hilarious episode, but then you get the last 10 minutes as well, and it's the perfect ending for River Song, the perfect ending for the character, and it makes me not want her to return, because I think this is so perfect, and it just makes me cry every time. It's emotional, it's hilarious, and it's just so comforting. It's just like a cozy little Christmas treat. Cozy little Christmas treat. You know what? Let's stick with Capaldi, shall we? Let's stick with Capaldi, and we're only going like a year earlier. We're going back to Series 9, which is a bit of an up and down series as a whole, but right slap bang in the middle is one of the best Doctor Who two-parters I've ever seen in my life. And it is Under the Lake Before the Flood. Again, why does no one talk about this more? I feel like it's one of those where people go, oh, like you often get chats on Twitter and things like that where people hype it up, and it's good to see. But this is a quintessential Doctor Who episode. This is essential viewing. If you could bottle what makes a great Doctor Who episode, this is that bottle. This episode, these two episodes, it's just genius. The supporting cast are all phenomenal. They're all memorable. I love them all, apart from the one that's a dick. And Capaldi and Coleman as well are just on form. They're just firing on all cylinders. They're bouncing off each other. It just works. You know, they've been doing it for a couple of years at this point. It's got a great cast, great direction, great script, great cliffhanger. That middle part cliffhanger is, again, one of the best. The ghost of Capaldi floating towards that ship is just, bellissimo. No, what did I just do?
Ew, this is so cringe. Guilty.
It's just fit as fuck. When Capaldi's ghost flies towards that ship, it's like, oh, mama, give me more. When Capaldi's ghost flies towards that ship, it's just like, whoa, Nelly. This is a hot one. Sorry. I've just done so many takes of that, and none of them work, so I'm just sticking with that. When Capaldi's ghost flies towards that ship, it's just pure, fucking pure what, you knob? What are you talking about? Pure fucking waffle, that's what that was.
No, we don't. No, we don't. Never let me see you doing that again.
Anyway, the cliffhanger is so good. And again, it's just an example of Doctor Who playing with time. I feel like Doctor Who doesn't play with time a lot, and it plays with a format. You have Capaldi delivering a monologue to the camera. It's genius. I'm going to speedrun a few because I feel like I'm just absolutely fucking waffling at this point. But next one, The Unquite Dead. Why does no one like The Unquite Dead? It's got such a great vibe. It's got that Hinchcliffe gothic vibe that I just love from the Baker years, and it works for Eccleston, and it just works for a great episode 3 and a great first trip back in time. I love the idea of a Christmas episode that's not a Christmas special. It just, I like just dipping into Christmas in the middle of a series. It's lovely, and it just, again, it just plays with that element of the fact that you can time travel and any day could be Christmas Day. I love that. It's also, again, one of the funniest episodes of Doctor Who. The comedy in this is so dark and so bleak, but so underrated. I just think it makes me laugh out loud every time. It's a shame that Simon Callow's a bit of a dick now, because, you know, he is great as Dickens, but, you know, fuck him. It's just a little gem. It's just a little gem. Right, next one. Smith. Let's go Smith. A Town Called Mercy. It is one of the best episodes of Doctor Who ever made. I mean, some of the humour doesn't entirely land for me. That's pretty much the only flaw. Adrian Scarborough just brings one of the best one-off Doctor Who supporting characters ever. And you get the Wild West vibe and you get the Wild West thing, but without all the cliches. It doesn't go Back to the Future Part 3 with it, and it's not all rootin' tootin' and all that. It feels like a real place, but it still has a bit of fun with it, and it's really well shot. It is a beautiful looking episode, and obviously shooting it on location wherever they shot it, I can't remember, was a great great shout. It's basically a prologue to the 50th, but just a little bit too soon. You know, the way that it explores the Doctor's character, the way that you can compare the actions of Carla Tech to Carla Tech, the not Gunslinger one. You know what I mean. The way that you can compare his actions to what the Doctor did in the Time War, and how it explores those themes of war and how far it pushes people. It's the perfect episode to put in Series 7 before the 50th. I just love it. I absolutely love it. Now, here's the big three. Now, there's 3 episodes that I want to talk about that, for me, all of these ones that I've spoken about before, they're all great, and a lot of them are very, very close to being, like, top tier, but these 3 are the tippity top. The tip top. Stop saying tip.
I can't get a moment's peace round here.
These are the upper echelons of Doctor Who. These 3, in my opinion, are all 10 out of 10 stories that no one talks about, or if they do talk about, they actually slag off a little bit, and I don't understand. The first one, which doesn't get a lot of grief, is The Girl Who Waited. Possibly, it's very close with The 11th Hour as my favourite 11th Doctor episode. You know, it's Moffat just hitting a home run, and he's just hitting his sweet spot of, you know, all of the humour is just at the right level, all of the emotion is just at the right level, and it's playing with time again, and that, again, just always makes for an interesting episode of Doctor Who if it's done right. And the character development, that's the thing, is if you can play with time and you can use time, but use it in a way where it's not a gimmick, it's actually furthering the characters, then you've nailed it. You've absolutely nailed it. You get a dark, manipulative Doctor, you get heartbreaking performances from Arthur Darvill and Karen Gillan, and it looks so good. You know, it's probably the cheapest episode. You can tell because, you know, it's like a couple of sets and 3 actors, but it's so good and it looks so good, and it's a prime example of Doctor Who doing its best work when it's on the tightest budget possible. The next one is actually my favourite 13th Doctor story, and I love talking about this story, but I hate the fact that people don't like it, and I can't believe I'm saying this. A lot of people I've seen don't like it because it's too weird. What show are you watching? The episode is It Takes You Away, and it takes Summit away. My breath. Fuck, that's not fucking going in. Not bad.
I wonder who put that there.
It's just an absolute belter. It's so underrated. It's so fresh and new and strange, and you know, it's unlike any other Doctor Who story I've seen before. The character work, I think this is one of my favourite performances of Jodie as the Doctor. You know, she's got that slightly darker edge to her, like the moment where she's writing on the wall in chalk and she's writing the message to Ryan. That really hits home for me. But the star of the show is Bradley Walsh, who gives a really lovely and subtle performance, this basically, it should have been the finale. It should have been the finale of Series 11, and I feel like they were too scared to go for emotion over spectacle, when emotionally this episode really drives home and really closes off the series, and then you get the Battle of Ranskor Kolos, which just feels unnecessary by that point. And it's got a frog on a chair. It's got a frog on a chair that's a universe that's trying to make friends. That is shit hot Doctor Who writing. The last one I'm going to talk about in detail before I go through some of the ones that you guys have suggested is, again, one of my favourite Doctor Who episodes of all time, and one that I can't believe people don't talk about more, because I don't just think it's one of the best episodes of Doctor Who. I think it's essential Doctor Who. I think it hits at the core of what Doctor Who is, what it's about, and it's like a milestone story in the Doctor's life and a masterpiece at the same time. And it's Listen. Listen is so underrated. It's one of the tightest scripts in Doctor Who. It's got that clever Moffat writing, but in a way where he doesn't take it too far, like he does sometimes. It's not too twee, it's not too forced, and it's really scary. It's properly scary. Capaldi, I think it's the first time that Capaldi really nails the Doctor, and I think it's also one of the best directed episodes of Doctor Who of all time. Just going to drop a little name right here, because I did speak to Douglas McKinnon, the director, on an episode of Who Knew. I'll put the link in the description if you want to go and listen to that, and we talk heavily about Listen and the way that it's directed, because I think it's absolutely beautiful. I don't know what more I can say. I just think if you haven't seen it in a while, I think just go and sit and watch it, and I hope that you reappraise if you're not a big fan already, because it's just genius. I love it, and I love all of those stories, and they're all underrated in my eyes, and there's so many more that I could go through. Now let's go through some of the ones that you guys have said. I'm just going to flick through loads because I've got so many replies on Twitter, and if you want to get your thoughts in on Twitter about a future Speakeasy, if there's a topic that tickles your fancy that I'm going to do, just tweet me. I usually tweet out before I record them so that you can get your thoughts in. Jude _pig and tea break. Underrated episode, Impossible Planet and Satan Pit. Arguably the best story of the modern era. Scary, funny, wholesome in places, and a real well-placed romp. Completely agree. One of the best two-parters in Doctor Who. The reason I didn't put it on is because I don't think it's as underrated as some of the others on this list. I think generally people do like it, but yeah, people need to rate that as one of the highest. Fraser at @orangefunk_ said underrated story is 42, a classic Who style banger, the best of series 3. That is a bold statement. I like 42. I like it a lot. I don't know if I'd agree with it being the best of series 3, but yeah, it's a solid shout. There is a lot of people screaming Boomtown here, which at that point, is Boomtown underrated if everyone is telling me it's underrated, or do we all just rate it and no one talks about it? Who knows? Albert at AlbertXMUA, underrated Night Terrors. Not only is it a brilliant OCD representation because of the rituals to avoid bad things happening, it also doubles as a coming out metaphor when it's revealed that the boy is an alien and the dad accepts in that way. I never saw it like that, so thanks for opening my eyes to that. But yeah, Night Terrors is a solid episode. I wouldn't put it up in the upper echelons, but yeah, it is pretty solid. Luca B at Malaka Luke, underrated. Into the Forests of the Night. Yeah, the ending is a bit but otherwise it's a fun romp. Not for me, Chief. Not for me. I'm not a fan. I'm really not a fan. Yeah, that ending.
I don't like it very much.
You and the Shadow Master at British Shadow GG on Twitter whacked in a load before the lake. Before the lake? The fuck is that? Under the Lake Before the Flood, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terrors, Smith and Jones, great shout, and A Christmas Carol, another underrated Christmas story. Yeah, Boomtown, Smile, Josh Carpenter, I don't agree with you, sorry. There's some interesting shouts, and again, it's one of those things. I think underrated episodes is a tough one, because what deems it to be rated? I mean, do you go off just general consensus that you see on Twitter, but then sometimes we just live in our own little echo chambers and we don't really get a sense of the wider opinion of something? Do you go off the Doctor Who magazine poll? But I don't, because I disagree with a lot of the rankings on there, and I don't think they really match up with the general consensus now either, and it is a little bit outdated. Yeah, it's a tough one, but they were my underrated episodes, and this was the Speakeasy. I hope you enjoyed it. There's going to be more of these coming. Again, if you want to submit a topic, just chuck one at me on Twitter. If you want to guarantee that your topic is in with a very good shout of getting made, you can sign up to our Patreon, and you can support the channel and the podcast at the same time. You get early access to these videos, you get early access to podcasts, you can even get a dinky little pin badge And I've just revamped the tiers, so it's actually a little bit cheaper now to sign up on the lowest tier. So if anyone fancies supporting the pod, it'll help me pay off my new laptop after my last one broke, and it would mean the world to me. So thank you. And yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Josh Ryan Carr, at whoknewdwpod, where you can keep up with the next Speakeasy. You can get your thoughts in when I tweet out about a topic. And yeah, that was Underrated Doctor Who Stories. Also, drop a like, subscribe, share this around, and let me know down below in the comments what you believe to be the most underrated Doctor Who stories of all time, because I'm genuinely intrigued. That's it from me, and I'll see you all soon. Big thank you to all of our patrons, and a massive shout out to Cal King. Thanks for listening to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts and now on YouTube. Please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you can, as it really helps us out. And a massive thanks to the Sononauts for lending their cover of the Doctor Who theme to be the theme for the podcast.
And it went on for ages.